2 on a Sunday, Wednesday evening on April 28th. Are the stenographers on the phone? On the call?
Yes, Telesco's secretary's here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe so.
All right, good. So do you need any help with the people that are on the call, or you can manage off of the screen? Right now, for this second, I'm only concerned about the commissioners. So you have Commissioner Romano, Commissioner Pinto, Commissioner Gifford, Commissioner Santella, Commissioner Gibby, Commissioner Jones, Commissioner Crespo,
And Chris McDonald.
Commissioner McDonald. So we're over a quorum, and if anybody comes in, then you can add them to the list. But let's get started. So that's your roll call. So I'm going to ask Dennis, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
Of
of
the
the
United
United States of America
and to the republic
which is
for which it stands,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay. I'm hoping that this is going to be our last Zoom meeting. The mayor said after the 19th of May, they're pretty much opening up City Hall to a degree. And they have to see the way that statistics go, but chances are we'll be clean and green by that time, and we can have our May meeting possibly in our regular place. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to the chairman of the plan review, John Pinto.
Application review.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, John. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to switch around the order of the applications and start with 12 Van Zandt Street. Everyone should have received a copy of the application. This is a CAM application for apartment on Van Zandt Street, 12 Van Zandt Street by Van Zandt Street LLC. Proposes to construct a 2.5 story, 5-unit townhouse on 12 Van Zandt Street. And as the building is located within the coastal management area, the proposed drainage system is being reviewed for consistency with the harbor management plan. And accordingly, the drainage system is intended to capture stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces, that is the roof and the driveway, through an on-site retention system consisting of 2-foot by 4-foot precast galleries. And the proposal includes an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater drainage system. And I've asked Ms. Liz Sudchi, who represents the applicant, to perhaps give us a quick overview of that project. Liz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Liz Sudchi. I'm a partner at the law firm of Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, and I represent the applicant Van Zandt Apartments, LLC. As Dr. Pinto correctly pointed out, this property is located within the far reaches of the CAM zone, and it is surrounded by other residentially and commercially developed properties, streets, curbs, sidewalks. It is not directly adjacent to nor in the vicinity of any coastal resources. However, since it's within the CAM boundary, we are obligated to submit an application for referral to this agency for your review for consistency with the harbor management plan. The property is about 10,000 square feet. Currently, there's a single family dwelling on the property and a garage. The plan is to demolish the house and the garage and construct a new multifamily structure containing 5 dwellings, 5 apartments, all of which would be 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and each unit would have 2 parking spaces in an under the unit garage. There are no variances required of any of the zoning requirements. Some street trees are proposed along with landscaping along the rear of the property. And as Dr. Pinto mentioned, there is a stormwater retention proposal to capture and treat stormwater that comes from the roof, the leaders, and the pervious surfaces on the property. Stormwater management plan and operations and maintenance plan was submitted to the Zoning Commission. I believe I provided that to Dr. Pinto as well. And just as a basic comment, it complies with all the requirements of zoning. It is a general development project in terms of coastal area management resources, uses, and policies, and based upon where the property is situated and what has been proposed by way of maintenance, handling of stormwater volume and stormwater quality, we believe that it is consistent with the harbor management plan. I thought that Dean Martin, the project engineer, was going to be on tonight's call, but I don't see that he's come in. Should you have any further questions, I'd be happy to share those with Mr. Martin, but it's a rather straightforward new development of 5 units within the boundary of the coastal zone. If you have any questions of me, I'm happy to answer them.
No, does anyone would like to make any comment? Because I've reviewed the plans. I saw the work that was done by the engineer, this Dean Martin, and I thought it was certainly right on target with regard to the capture of rainwater from the impervious surface. Again, they have a maintenance plan issued and for operation of the system. And then, as I said, I see no problem with that application from the standpoint of it being consistent with the harbor management plan. If anyone has any other comments.
I just want to paraphrase exactly what you said, John. Everything is very good. I reviewed the plans in its entirety, and it's a quality builder. So at the end of the day, that's what we need to be most cognizant about, that we're getting a good quality product in that area.
All right, so with that, I'd like to certainly make a proposal for recommendation.
Yeah, John, it's Jeff. Could I
Yes,
interrupt for a second?
Sure,
Yeah,
Jeff.
I think at the last meeting, we talked about having as a general comment on these sorts of applications, in addition to being consistent with the plan, we'd recommend that the zoning commission attach a condition requiring perpetual maintenance of the system.
All right, well, they did state that in their application. So we
I
can
think it
certainly,
should still be a condition.
we can certainly
of
iterate that. We can certainly
development
iterate that
approval.
comment. Yes, certainly iterate that comment with regard to our recommendation. And so if I can put forward a proposal for a recommendation that the Harbor Management Commission discussed the matter during its meeting of April 28th, with the understanding that the applicant's overall project will improve existing stormwater runoff conditions on the affected properties, including the property used for parking. And accordingly, the Harbor Management Commission approved a motion to find the current proposal is consistent with the Norfolk Harbor Management Plan, provided Engineering Division determines that the overall project meets all applicable city stormwater management and maintenance requirements. And in addition, as we usually put as far as our caveat, that we certainly reserve the right to continue review and comment on the applicant's proposal at such time that it may be modified or when additional information concerning the proposal may be available. And again, of course, include in that the maintenance schedule that was usually required, that we usually require for the for treatment of the operating galleries, the sump pump galleries.
Okay. So you want to, that's your
Second.
motion. Is there a
That's my
second to the
motion.
motion?
Thank you, ma'am.
Seconded by Matt. All in favor?
All right, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Any,
Abstentions? So moved.
Okay.
As an aside, to tail on to what Jeff just said, and I remember us saying that we should have these things memorialized some way. Maybe we need to talk to legal and talk to P&Z, that maybe that in the future going forward, or even with this application, that this requirement for the maintenance gets put into the deed. So there's no question about it. Title changes hands, or they have to go back to the approvals of today. It's in the deed. So it's something that would be a requirement to do. Is that easy enough to do, Liz? Or?
Mr. Romano, I will certainly discuss with staff, but if this is a concern of yours, it would likely be made a condition of approval in the event that the project is approved by the zoning commission, and that document becomes the part of the permanent public record. I don't believe there is a certificate that gets recorded in connection with this application, but it's part of the commission's approval if it so approves, and part of the minutes of.
No, I understand that, but 30 years from now, somebody buys the property.
Well, as far as making it part of the deed, I don't know if we could encumber the property with that, but it's certainly part of the record in connection with this application.
I'm just worrying about it from a mechanical standpoint in the future sometime. That's all.
Well, I will talk to staff who is on the line tonight and just make sure that the zoning commission is aware of this. And as far as Dr. Pinto's traditional and usual comment that you maintain continuing jurisdictional review. Should there be any changes to the plan by virtue of the review by the zoning commission or any other agencies, I will certainly send those revised plans if they are created to Dr. Pinto for his review and distribution to all of you, as we typically do.
Liz, you've been very diligent on that, so I can certainly verify that. Thank you.
Too much paper for you, I apologize.
That's all right.
Thank you all for your help tonight.
All right, no, thank you very much, Liz.
Stay well.
All right. Okay, moving on. Next application is 11 Pine Point Road in Rowayton. The applicant is the 6th taxing district, and this is at 33 Highland Avenue. And what the applicant proposes to do is to remove approximately 400 cubic feet of soil laden with rhizomes from an invasive species. It's a Phragmites australis, apparently a very invasive type of plant that's also indigenous to also Massachusetts and Connecticut. They plan to remove it from the southern section of the brook in that area and replace the excavated area with the same soil volume free of invasive plant rhizomes. That's going to be a project to begin with, because these are very hardy, extremely hardy plants to remove and remediate by simply digging, which they plan to do. The length of the project is 360 feet of the brook channel, and at the channel bottom, about 12 to 18 inches of soil will be removed. They're going to be using an excavator to do that at the shoreline there, and the same amount of fill will be replaced in the channel to restore existing grades. And the project area will be seeded with appropriate herbaceous species that are indigenous to the area. And silt fencing and hay bales will be installed around the project area to contain any suspended material during the construction period. If anyone, any of the commissioners have any comment or want to remark or review the project? Here we have, as I said, this is, as far as our plan is concerned, well, anyway, don't have any comment on that project.
Only thing, John, is you said 400 cubic feet, it's 400 cubic yards.
Did I say cubic feet? All right, 400 cubic yards. Thank you, Alan.
Kath?
John, the plan encourages and supports enhancement or restoration of degraded intertidal resources according to a well thought out plan. So in that regard, I think we could say this is consistent with the plan, with the harbor management plan.
Yeah, the thing that I'm concerned about is their method of removal of the rhizomes, because as I said, as perhaps Mr. Schnurline can comment on, and that as far as this plan is concerned, digging up that plant is going to be quite problematic, and probably as what they recommend, or what is recommended, is the most efficient manner is to use an herbicide, which is comparable to Roundoff, but that takes about 2 or 3 years to remediate. And I was curious to see whether they have a plan in place for follow-up as far as the remediation project, but I guess that's not really our concern, but there's the potential of them perhaps using that if in the long run, if they need to go that far. But right now they plan to just do straight excavation and just pulling out those rhizomes. Any event. All right. Well, if we can move forward with this application. Steve, do you have any comment from Shellfish?
No, John.
Right.
John,
So, yeah.
what Deep does is they will go in and mow the Phragmites down.
Right.
Then they spray it. And then they come back another year and they mow what's still left. They may put a second application of the herbicide down, but they
Well,
don't.
they didn't say that this time, Joe.
Right,
They didn't talk about using the phosphoglycinate.
correct. So it's your point about the rhizomes surviving is well taken. And they're tough little buggers and they might be able to come back
Well,
if they don't get them up.
well, they plan to go down quite deep, but again, I don't know how long the rhizomes have been there. In any event, we can move forward. And again, with our comment that during the meeting of April 28th, with the understanding that the applicant's overall project will improve the existing wetland condition on the affected properties. And accordingly, the Harbor Management Commission, and this is again a part of our motion that we could make, approved the motion to find the proposal is consistent with the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan to preserve and enhance the value of wetlands and control the spread of invasive plant populations that might perhaps prevent successful mitigation and impact to wetlands. And perhaps another caveat that we can do a recommendation that the applicant should be required to employ appropriate best management practices during the excavation because they plan to use heavy equipment, dozer equipment, to ensure that the proposed work, including removal of the debris from the invasive plant, does not cause any adverse impact on environmental quality, including water quality in Norwalk Harbor.
And John, maybe you want to add also a recommendation requiring monitoring of the
Yes,
success
well,
of
that
the
was gonna
project.
be, yeah, that was going to be next. And I said perhaps the applicant should be required to provide an anticipated schedule for initial monitoring and treatment that would improve subsequent and would involve subsequent monitoring and controlled implementation measures for at least a year post construction. Perhaps, if possible, that the applicant should incorporate an invasive wetland plant control strategy that may perhaps incorporate the use of herbicides. I don't know if we should even mention that, but I'm sure they might have to resort to that in the final analysis, which would probably, as far as I'm concerned, not be well for that environment in that area. Any event.
Would we be in favor of allowing them to use, something like Roundup in a
Well, that's the other thing too. That would have to come to a subsequent application because this application does not deal with that.
Yeah. I can't get their numbers to work in terms of the cubic yardage. The one
What do you mean,
part says
Chris?
2,800 square feet.
Yeah.
2,800 square feet by a foot and a half deep is not 400. It's a lot less than 400 cubic yards.
Well, let's see. The length of the project they talk is 360 feet. I didn't do the math, to be honest with you, Chris. I was just taking their engineers, and that's, as a matter of fact, Tom Ryder from Land Tech is supposed to join us, and that is one of his projects. Is Tom
I'm here. I'm
Oh,
here.
Tom.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to comment on that?
I just got here. I don't exactly know what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're discussing 11 Pine Point Road in Rowayton for the project by the 6th Taxing District on the removal of the rhizomes for the Phragmites.
Okay.
And Chris McDonald had a question with regard to the removal of the amount of cubic yardage that you plan to remove. What was that, Chris? I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me find in the deep application section, it says that the area of the affected area is 2,800 square feet.
Okay.
At a depth of a foot and a half, which gives you 155 cubic yards and not 400 cubic yards.
Okay. I'm at a disadvantage here. What I did is I asked our CAD guys to calculate the volume for me. I certainly admit that there might be an error on that, and it does sound like there is an error on that. I can certainly provide a different number as a follow-up to this, but I don't really know if basically it's going to be what we're taking out is what we're putting back. So to me, the opinion, the volume really doesn't matter because it's not we're not doing fills or not cutting cut. We're not changing the grades. We're taking it out. We're putting it back in. So if the number is wrong, I apologize, but I'm thinking about it truly now. It may not actually matter. For officially, it could. Yes, I can send you that number afterward. But the whole thing is really that we're replacing it in kind, and whatever the number is, it is. It's not going to affect grades. It's not going to affect any future changes in flows or anything along those lines. It's going to be what it is.
Right. Yes, that would be the requirement, that it would go back in the same volume.
Does anyone have any further comments on that project? As I said,
John, instead
yeah.
of making a recommendation about the types of the method to be used, if it doesn't work, why don't you?
Oh, no,
just-
I don't think we should make, yeah, I'm just saying that was sort of a suggestion. I don't think we should make any kind of.
No, in terms of herbicides, just if there's a requirement for monitoring and then adjustments is necessary to include to attain a successful project.
We're not doing any herbicides. That's the whole reason. We were given a specific requirement not to use herbicides. So this is why we're digging out the rhizomes and doing all the physical work, because we were given the requirement not to use herbicides.
Yeah.
We understand that, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, I was a little bit late to that. I apologize.
No, that was, I was just talking sort of in general, Tom, with regard to the impervious, the hardiness of this particular invasive plant with regard to just simply digging. And that, I mean, they've used digging, they've used, pulling everything up by the roots. They've used burning, they've used mowing, they've put in black tarp on top of it and still doesn't do anything. So there's a number of methodologies that they've used with minimal success. Certainly what you plan to do is as far as I'm concerned, is more environmentally safe. And then the last resort was to use the phosphoglycinates, the Roundup material.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that was a comment that I made. I don't think that you should go in that route. And I think DEP is certainly making a wise decision not to go in that direction. So again, I'd like to iterate my my proposal with regard to a recommendation that we find the approval, the existing wetland conditions on the affected properties, as I said, will be improved. And the Harbor Management Commission will approve a motion to find the proposal is consistent with the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan to preserve, I guess we can alter the wording a bit, to preserve and enhance the values of wetlands and control the spread of invasive plant populations that might prevent successful mitigation of impacts to wetlands. And then as the last caveat is to have the applicant employ certainly best management practices during excavation with the use of heavy equipment, bulldozers, et cetera, in the area, along with the appropriate bales and screening, for example, to prevent washout into debris to be removed into the harbor area, and then have some sort of plan in place for schedule for initial monitoring and treatment, and that would involve subsequent monitoring and control implementation measures for at least a year, following, to see how effective the removal was.
If I can speak still, we agree to that, because the whole reason we're doing this is because the 6 taxing districts wants it gone.
Right.
So monitoring it is basically built into that formula, in that we want to make sure that it's still there, and after year after year, we're going to going out and we're going to be hand pulling these things out there just to make sure that it is gone.
Right. Does anybody have any further comment? Because if we can move forward with that proposal or recommendation. Anyone from the commission would like to second that?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alan. All right, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, moving forward. All right, the next application, Tom, is also with Land Tech, and that's for 8084 Seaview Avenue in East Norwalk, COP. And 80 Seaview Avenue LLC, was the applicant, proposes to repave a contiguous parking area between 80 and 84 Seaview Avenue with 5,290 square feet of, I guess, macadam. And following repavement of the parking facility, a partially constructed deck on 84 Seaview Avenue will be completed with installation of the decking, putting in, I guess, with railings and access ramp. And authorization is being sought, as I understand, for retention of the wooden deck and completion of construction. So I know there are a number of questions that we do have, but I thought, Tom, if you'd like to address that application.
Yeah, this is about as straightforward as I'm ever able to present. This is a existing parking lot there. It's between two restaurants. Overton, you're probably familiar with Overton's and Harbor Lights. Harbor Lights is an indoor seating establishment, and Overton's is more of a takeout. And there's a parking lot in between. And the reason that we're in front of the DEP is because a good portion of that, probably a little more than half, is below the CJL and therefore within the state's jurisdiction. So we have to file an application with the state in order to do that. So in order to do that, like I said, we filed an application with the DEP, and they wanted to know basically what we're doing. And the thing is that we are removing the top course. We are going to be regrading the gravel down below. We're not bringing in anymore. We're just kind of regrading it all, and then we're putting the asphalt back on top to meet existing grades. There is a decking that was installed. We had received, they had received local permits for it. They did not receive a DEP permit for it, so they stopped construction of the decking. The decking is currently in the situation that it has the base footers and the stringers on it, but it doesn't have the formal decking, doesn't have the railing, so we stopped. We're now asking the DEP to approve it. They have no problems with doing so, that we just have to go through the formal application process. We're doing that now. And so that brought us to you.
Well, Tom, in all fairness, a major concern of the commission has always been remediation of stormwater runoff and the impact that stormwater runoff would have, certainly in the proximity of this project with regard to the East Basin. And it's certainly been a concern. The commission has always been a concern about the potential adverse impact of stormwater runoff from impervious systems draining into Norwalk Harbor. And again, our plan calls for protection and improvement of water quality in Norwalk Harbor and supports appropriate best management practices to avoid any kind of adverse effect from and mitigation from to mitigate non-point source stormwater runoff. Now, this parking lot, as I understand, does not have any system to deal with water runoff. And we're just wondering, certainly, since you're digging up that macadam, that entire area there, that certainly putting in place some sort of water treatment or potential diminish the runoff from the impervious surface prior to going into Norwalk Harbor.
Like I said, this was already approved. Sorry, excuse me.
That's all right.
Hold on, Savannah. Yeah, this has already received local approval for the decking. The pavement, I do not think has, I don't think has received local approval. I don't think it was going through the local permitting process as of that. We are not offering any stormwater management differences. We do know that the wall is in place. So the wall actually protects any surface water coming off, but there is a catch basin in there that will all remain as is. So there are no improvements proposed. It was all just going to be a status quo. The DEP, however, is very interested in that kind of stuff, and this is just the earlier stages of the COP process. So I am sure that the DEP will bring that up if they.
Well, that's an issue that the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission oftentimes brings up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is where we try to maintain consistency
Sure.
with all of our recommendations and applications moving forward.
Yeah,
So-
but John, it's a deep requirement. It's not an option. And it doesn't, you touch the property, you make any kind of changes, you're supposed to put a remediation plan in for recapturing the water.
So I guess what I'm saying to that is that this is in the process of the DEP permitting approval process. So that we have not received their comments yet. That would probably be one of the comments they would require.
I know deep is not majorly upset about the deck that's going in, but they did issue a cease and desist order. So let's not make light of that. That's a reality. It's a fact. Put
Well,
it
John, that's for 80, that's 80 Seaview, and that's for the
for the wood deck.
previous notice of violation, not for the deck, for the deck, but was for the backfilling of the.
This cease and desist was done on April 5th, I think.
Yeah, there was one for the deck.
Oh,
There is one for the deck, John.
That's correct.
all right.
So, I mean, and Deep does not have any problems because they even wrote her a letter saying that. I guess there's some ambiguity, and where it comes from is that at one time there was a commercial boat business there, and that boat business allowed them to do what they did in terms of the decking that's there.
Don't confuse the deck and the dock.
Right. The dock is, I can explain that. The dock, there's a large multi-slip dock that is there, and that was put in during the marina purposes that was previously there. That is being done under a structures dredging and fill permit application. That is being addressed separately. This application is only for the small deck and the paving. So yes, we do have to deal with seawalls. We do have to deal with other issues. And we do have to deal with the marina in conformance with DEP regulations. That is being done under a separate structures dredging and fill permit.
Jeff, did you have a comment?
The notice of violation brings up a point that we've tried to address previously, that when such notices are provided by DEP or issued by DEP, they should send a copy to the Harbor Management Commission as well as to the owner of the property. So I think we want to reiterate any comments we make on this. I think we want to reiterate that same recommendation, if that's the right word, or request that in the future notices of violation be sent to the commission. Then another question is, do you anticipate that there'll be a consent order or a fine associated with that notice?
There are two violations as mentioned in this meeting here. One was the consent order to cease and desist, basically, for the deck. There's not going to be any violation that I'm aware of, any fee for that. There was fill put in south of Harbor Lights on 84 Seaview. That one is incurring a penalty, and we are dealing again that through the structures dredging and fill permit process, which is basically going to start in a couple weeks. So yeah, we do have a permit.
I think that again, to follow our procedure, we would, to the extent possible, encourage that fine, any fine that's imposed, not go to the state general fund, but go back to the Harbor Management Fund.
Well, I don't have any, right. You can provide the recommendation. I don't have any authority in that, obviously, but that process hasn't even started yet. That's the process. That's structures dredging and fill. We're going to be starting putting that together probably next week, and then we'll be starting that process, in which case you you don't really have as much of an input. The public doesn't have much of an input on the COP, but there is a lot of input from your agency under structures dredging and fill, and you will have the opportunity then to provide a lot of comments during that period.
Well, we're going to assert our interest and our authority under the COP, which has to
well,
be
yeah, you do
provided
get
to the
some,
Harbor
right.
Commission for review.
Mhm.
And I think that two comments, John, might be that Commission might consider has no objection to the completion of the deck. We requested that such notices of violation be provided to the Harbor Management Commission in the future, and that absent any sort of stormwater management improvements for the parking lot, that would be inconsistent with the stormwater management policies of the plan.
Harbor Management Plan. That's correct. Yeah. Right. Well, we can make those, if any commissioners have any additional comment, we can make those as part of our recommendation.
My only comment would be that this project's been a long time coming. It spans 50, 60 years, all the stuff that exists there or longer. So they're doing it now, and it's going to be another 20, 30, 40, 50 years before they do it again. I think it should be done right up front, where the drainage is taken care of. And Tom, when you describe what they're going to do is they're just going to scarify and take a layer of asphalt off, keep whatever existing drainage is there. But I don't remember seeing any calculations to what that's gonna do to the overall retention of the water on site. And there is maybe a positive benefit to relook at it, to maybe regrade and repitch and put in, like I know I've had to do in some of my properties and projects and others, a catch basin kind of scenario where, you know, I have a 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 gallon tank that captures the water.
Yeah, we're familiar with the water quality improvements. Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. I can run this past the owners, and I can run this past our engineers, and run it past DEP, and bring up this discussion. I think what you mentioned is valid. It just hadn't been raised to this point, so it hadn't been discussed to this point. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
But I think that should be put into our remarks.
Mhm.
Yes, well, that's what I'd like to move forward with, John, because we want to certainly, move forward with all applications here. Again,
Absolutely.
Yeah, again, Jeff, you want to make the comments again as far as what recommendations, certain recommendations, so we can, perhaps one of the commissioners can.
I was
second
just
that.
looking at our previous recommendations on this. I would just, for your consideration, that the commission has no objection to completion of the public deck, but we also want to stress that, or recommend that in the future, notices of violation be provided to the Harbor Management Commission as well as to the violator, and that the proposal for repaving the parking lot is not consistent with the Harbor Management Plan insofar as it does not include any stormwater management measures.
Okay,
Now, that would be the sense of the motion, I think.
yes.
Is there a second to that motion? Matt seconds it.
Right.
Dennis thirds it.
All right, all right, thank you, guys. All right, so all those in favor of the motion proposed?
All right.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? All right. All right, well, all right, thank you very much. So we'll move forward with those three recommendations on that. I've marked those down. The last proposal, well, actually, the second, we have 2 Nathan Hill Road in Norwalk. This is an application by John and Barbara Erdman, proposes to install a 25-foot long, 11 foot by 8-inch wide by 16-inch high floating boat lift on the east side of an existing authorized float. The float is adjoined by a 30 by 2.5 foot ramp to a 30 by 6 foot wide fixed pier. The boat lift will be constructed off-site, floated into place during the mid-high tide by boat, and then secured to the floating dock via sprig lines. And there's no construction or sediment disturbances are proposed. Again, if anyone has any comment on that application, Tom, if you'd like to add any further information on that?
No, that's basically it. It's constructed offsite just to put into place as a float and left and used in place like it normally would be for a boat lift. It's basically designed to keep the hull off the ground, off the substrate during low flows, low tides. And I don't see any downside to it environmentally. And it's, again, constructed offsite and just attached to the existing floats.
If anyone has any other comments, we can go ahead with the proposal, perhaps. Does anyone have any comment on that? All right, well, we can, as I said, we've, as far as our comment with regard to these types of projects, we've conducted our review of the applicant's plans to install a floating boat lift on an existing authorized float, and finds the project is consistent with the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan. Again, as usual, we'd like to reserve our right to continue to review the applicant's proposal, provided if it provides any additional comment at such time that it may be modified, additional information is provided, et cetera, or goes out to public notice. In addition, the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission would probably transmit one of the comments that we talked about, and that's usually with regard to these types of projects, is that it is the policy of the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan that no float or vessel attached to the float rest on the bottom of the harbor during any normal tide cycle, as part of our overall caveat. Those are the proposals that we can move forward. If anyone has any additional comments or like to make on that. Any additions to that?
I do. How about pulling it out in the wintertime? Do they pull the docks and stuff out in the wintertime?
They typically do not. This one would be. There's no reason to have this one in the water in the wintertime, so this one would be pulled out, yes.
Well, we can add that, Peter.
Yeah.
You know, if the Shellfish Commission feels, that's not a shellfish area though, as far as digging around there, is it? No.
No, but we've been using it. If we're doing it everywhere else, we haven't pulled the docks.
It would certainly be to their advantage, certainly to remove that lift instead of leaving it in the water during, you know, certainly, as I saw, it's quite an elaborate boat lift. As imagine, it's not your usual garden variety davit, and that keeps the boat out of the water. It's a floating platform that exists. Yeah.
It's just a floating platform. You drive up on it and pull back out on it, right?
And it's a heavy plastic, heavy polyurethane or polypropylene
Correct.
construct. Yeah.
Correct.
All right, Peter, we can certainly make those comments as far as removal of the platform during the winter months. All right, we'll add that. If any commissioners have any further comment on that? All right, I'd like to have a vote then on that proposal. All those in favor? All right, aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Good, so move forward. The next application.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for your time on all this stuff. I know there was.
I'm sorry,
late.
Tom.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you,
Tom, thank you
Tom.
very much.
Bye.
All right, we'll get back to you on our recommendations.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Take
I'll
care.
send it to you. The next application deals with a comment that we need to make on it was a, I guess it's a, I'm not, how to, maybe Michelle can help me with this. Is Michelle here? Michelle?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, this was the amendment that you wanted us to comment on the amendment on this workforce housing regulation.
Yeah, so it's similar to when we referred, what we're looking for is similar to when we referred over the that 3 East wall changes to the historic
Right.
regulation. So the idea here is that there is affordable housing that is near the coast. So we just want to cover our bases and
Right. So what this is, as I understand it, this is just an overall proposal that, as I see the purpose of this regulation is to provide a full range of workforce housing options with a priority given to ownership housing and to increase the supply of workforce housing units affordable to persons of moderate income by encouraging the construction of such housing units within specified multifamily and mixed-use developments. Now, like you had pointed out, Michelle, we did make comment for similar types of projects. And I went ahead and put together, based on their previous proposals, what perhaps we could add to this amendment with regard to this workforce housing project regulation. And what I had put down here, and I did send this to Michelle as a suggestion as to whether this would work for zoning. And we had the North Harbor Management Commission has decided the amendments to the workforce housing regulation during its meeting of April 28th, 2021. If the proposed workforce development project falls within a coastal management area, the Harbor Management Commission reserves its right to review the project for consistency with the North Harbor Management Plan. And the recommendations that we made previously at the 3 Wall Street project, and it was the following recommendations and comments for the amendment regarding the workforce housing made by the Harbor Management Commission should be applicable to any project that falls within a coastal management area. And the comments that we made, if in general, the North Harbor Management Commission is, the North Harbor Management Commission is concerned about potential adverse impacts of stormwater from impervious areas draining into the harbor. And the plan calls for protection and improvement of water quality in the harbor and supports appropriate best management practices to avoid or otherwise mitigate non-point source pollution. Second point, that the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission supports implementation of runoff reduction and low impact development practices pursuant to the city's stormwater management requirements. And the third comment, that is, if the multifamily development proposal affects property within the coastal boundary and may affect property on, in, or contiguous to Norwalk Harbor Management Area, it should be referred by zoning commission to the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission for review pursuant to section 22A 113P of the Connecticut General Statutes in the plan. The requirements of this review are specified specified in section 22 of the Connecticut General Statutes. And there's other comments that are made that pursuant to the general statutes in the plan, a 2/3 vote of all members of the zoning commission is needed to approve a proposal that has not received a favorable recommendation from the Norwalk Harbor Management Commission. And what we would have is the proposed text of the amendment should include development standards designed to have a net benefit. And this was the key point of the project that was at 3 Wall Street, and that there was a reduction in the coverage in the parking area. For example, as we had indicated, I'll explain that in a moment, is that the proposed amendment should include development standards designed to have a net benefit to drainage conditions by limiting building and parking coverage to 70% of the proposed property development. No such limit currently exists. As an aside, what we could maybe suggest is that a municipality may allow less than what has been currently proposed, and that was the 70%, on a portion of a lot or parcel that is within 100 to 500 feet of the ordinary high water mark, provided the city issues a permit that requires a mitigation plan approved by the city and DEP and implemented by the property owner. The mitigation plan could include enforcement obligations of the property owner to establish and maintain the measures that the city and its harbor management and the Harbor Commission and Shellfish Commission determine adequate to offset the impacts of the impervious surface on water quality near or offshore adequate aquatic habitat, in particular shellfish resources, upland wildlife habitat, and natural scenic beauty. So those were the comments that we had put into place for that particular application. And I thought we can add that as a similar caveat to the workforce building, if it doesn't include a property in the coastal management area. Any comment? Well, if not hearing any, if you want, as I said, we can develop a proposal based on those comments that we submitted previously for the 3 East Avenue project, and suggest that the zoning commission incorporate that as part of their amendment in this workforce housing development application.
John, are you gonna create that and circulate it to us to look at? Or?
All right, I can do that. Yeah, I can send everyone a copy, a written down copy, and then if you want to, we don't have to, I guess I'll send everyone a copy on that. Yes, to sort of review that. If you want, I could probably send it over. Well, it's difficult. I guess I can send it over now, but I could send it over after our meeting.
Yeah, but that's a document that that's in progress too.
Yes,
So,
Michelle, when does the comment have to be in?
I think it's ongoing. I don't think so. It's on the agenda for the 6th, but I'm not sure if they're gonna have a determination. It might be on the agenda a couple times. So there's no real deadline, but probably, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll get the verbiage out to all the commissioners, and we can, if you want, we could micromanage or add various comments as you go along. But I will send that out to everyone after the meeting. All right. All right. So no vote necessary on this. Nothing taken. As I said, I'll send that response out to all the commissioners. The last application is an application for 68 Water Street in South Norwalk. And there's a little bit of an issue here. This is a complete application. And this application, as you saw, involves the FCNW LLC, the applicant is Mr. Salvatore DiNardo, who proposes to replace a previously existing deteriorated waterfront bulkhead structure with 180-foot linear foot and wooden pile and timber bulkhead running parallel along the river shoreline. The northern 85-foot section of the bulkhead will be constructed immediately waterward of the remnants of the deteriorated wooden pile and timber bulkhead that's currently existing there. And at the midpoint of the property shoreline, the bulkhead line will be stepped back landward about 10 feet, and the remaining 85-foot long section of the bulkhead will continue to the southern property boundary, running parallel to the northern section of the bulkhead. Approximately 1,020 cubic feet of fill will be placed landward of the northern bulkhead section below the high tide line, and about 10-foot wide wooden deck will be constructed along the waterward side of the southern 85-foot long section of the bulkhead. The deck elevation will be 9 feet from the National Geodetic vertical datum, height equivalent with the top of the bulkhead. And the waterward side of the deck will be supported by a series of wooden piles driven 10 feet on center. And the proposed work also includes the installation of a 25 by 6 foot wide floating dock with dock stop mechanisms for recreational vessels, and adjoined with a 22 by 3 foot aluminum ramp. The dock will be secured to pilings using metal chain to allow the dock to rise and fall with the tide. As I sent out to the commissioners, we have an issue with this particular application from a number standpoint, and I'll just reiterate what was behind the scenes with regard to DEP, with regard to the notice of violation that occurred and what respired subsequently to that. On September 10th, 1999, an inspection of the 68 Water Street was conducted as a result of a complaint received on September 2nd, 1999, regarding unauthorized activity in Norwalk Harbor at that location. And what was cited, the applicant was cited for placement of approximately 50 yards of riprap waterward of the high tide line adjacent to an existing unauthorized deteriorated bulkhead and riprap. And there was also maintaining an unauthorized structure at the site, which included a 165-foot long, 2 foot wide concrete block seawall. And then, of course, there were a number of T-shaped dolphins and pile-supported wooden dock that was run along the length of that property, and as well as other wooden bulkhead behind that, going on for about 160 yards, additional of riprap that was put down there. And again, there was another sorted dolphins. But what had happened was, and then on June 20th of 2000, a notice of violation was issued to Mr. DiNardo for the unauthorized activity. According to Mr. DiNardo, he worked, according to him, well, accordingly, Mr. DiNardo worked with the Office of Long Island Sound Programs at the DEP to provide restoration at the site and applied for a permit to retain and modify the remainder of the shoreline structure. The permit was issued on February 16th of 2012 with no outstanding requirements for restoration. As a result, at the time, Cheryl Chase, who is the supervising environmental analyst, recommended the violation be closed. And the memo goes on to say that Mr. DiNardo is not relieved of his obligation to comply with all of the applicable provisions of the Connecticut General Statute or to obtain any other authorizations as may be required by other provisions of the Connecticut General Statutes. And this letter was signed by Sue Jacobson, who was the case analyst at the time, an engineer, along with Cheryl Chase, who is the applicant. So we're not sure exactly what's going on with that application right now, but according to DEP, that notice of violation has been rescinded with the idea that the applicant was going to head and remediate that problem at that time. He's not done that for well over 8 years. That is, and I think that permit may be probably expired. And then now comes this new permit. Now, the other issues that exist at this property, as you well know, the DOT has also submitted plans to DEP to rebuild the bulkhead. And according to Sue Jacobson, an application was submitted to them on February 17th of 2021. So now we have a loggerhead coming in together here where we've got two factions with the owner and the DOT planning on using that property. Now, you recall that the DOT was planning to use that property to build a bulkhead and a docking there to house the two excursion vessels that occur, at the Maritime vessel and the Seaport Association vessel as a alternate site for, instead of going between the bridges, that they were going to use that site for the vessel relocation projects that they propose. Yet another issue that we have here, and that is Eversource still has plans to complete their horizontal drilling project to relocate the 265,000 kilovolt, 165 kilovolt transmission lines at the 68 Water Street property. So there's a number of issues that we have that are ongoing here that we don't know pretty much about. And so I just wanted to toss that out as to how we proceed, or how we should proceed with this application, because I don't think there's enough information to make any kind of recommendation right now. Jeff?
Is there a representative of the applicant to talk about the
No.
project?
No.
Well, I'll just say a little bit, because I remember we went on this property in 1998. And at that time, and we have all the dates because we have all the letters we wrote. And at that time, the owner was proposing a change of use. And that was when we identified when we asked the question about the riprap and the state of the shoreline. And then it was I guess it was a year after that someone asked that the DEP take a look at it, and the DEP looked at it, and the work was unpermitted, and the notice of violation was issued in 1999.
Right.
There was no response to that notice until 2004, when the owner submitted an application to rebuild the bulkhead there. And the Harbor Commission at the time was not prepared to make a favorable recommendation because we wanted information on the status of the violation. And then everything went away again until 2012, and we were surprised that the permit was issued at that time. And it was by DEEP. And it was at that time that DEEP issued that memorandum saying that they had closed the violation. But it's our understanding that the violation was closed not because the owner corrected or removed the unauthorized work, but because if the owner built what was permitted, he would fix the violation, and there would no longer be a violation. So DEEP wasn't going to require them to remove it and then put a bulkhead back.
Right.
But that work was never undertaken. And so the permit expired, and now we're at the point where we are now, where we also have reviewed an application by the DOT to rebuild that same bulkhead. So I think that it just requires additional information to understand who's doing what here and what's actually being proposed. So we could have further discussion, but would suggest we table this and get additional information and take it up next.
Well, that's what I was hoping to hear. That's what I was hoping to hear from DOT with regard to their plans with that area, because we're now at a loggerhead. We have the owner proposing a project there, and we have the DOT, and apparently the owner was unaware of the fact that the DOT was going to carry out that project, as I understand. I'm not quite sure about that, but maybe again, someone from DOT can maybe address that issue. That's why I reserved this particular application as the last one, because it'll dovetail perhaps with regard to comments that the DOT could perhaps make with regard to other projects that going on in Norfolk Harbor.
And if you also remember, around that, as a result of this, the commission requested a meeting with DEEP in Hartford to discuss, these matters having to do with bulkhead construction and notices of violation, and that was requested by Chairman Callahan at the time. So it was a question.
We have the
Also a question
Eversource
of
issue too.
a question of fairness when a residential property owner builds something without permission, such as it wasn't a residential owner, but the Seaview Avenue project with a notice of violation, and the owner corrects it. Here, I think to be fair, those notices should be equally enforced, no matter who is the violator.
Right. Well, I'd make a recommendation that we table this application for further information, and we'll bring this up in discussion in May.
But John,
John,
Yes.
I thought we were questioning the DOT as to their ownership, intent, lease. I mean, my understanding was that this property has been leased to the DOT. But that's, you know, that's what I would like to know as a commissioner. Who actually has rights to develop this property at this time?
Well, that's perhaps, maybe we can, we can table this discussion and have that discussion with DOT since they are here at the meeting this evening.
But it would be appropriate to have a representative of the applicant too.
As
The
well.
applicant's
So we can-
engineer.
I think that we're being asked to act on two projects at the same time, in the same location, and make a recommendation. I don't think that there's, it's up to us to, I don't care who owns the property. I'm looking at an application. Now I'm looking at two applications. So which one do you want us to work on? Which one do you want us to review? Because there's two, and that doesn't make any sense at all. And beyond that, we know we have the Eversource project going through there somehow, and we'll be asked to review that. So we've got three possible reviews of the same property.
Sure.
So I think that's the way you kick it back to say, well, you need more information. Is what are we supposed to be working on, guys? You use two projects in the same spot. Who do we believe, or who's?
No, it's not who we believe. Who has the so-called jurisdiction or who has the authority to do the work in that grant.
The DOT is the only one at this meeting, so can we have them address?
Yes. So if it's agreement with all the commissioners, we will table this application for further information and perhaps have the applicant present from 68 Water Street next month, along with perhaps the comments that we'll hear from DOT this evening. All right. So it's an agreement that we will table this.
Yes.
Yes, John.
All right. All right. So with that, I'd like to finish our application review as far as the formal applications, and perhaps turn it over to John to invite DOT to present.
Okay. I think you need a motion though, John, for tabling that application.
Well, that's what I'd like to have a motion to table that application till next month.
I'll second it. Second.
Laurie seconds it, and all in favor?
All's in favor? Aye.
Abstentions, objections? So moved.
All right.
So, Chris Jahemchek, Christian Brown, all the usual suspects from DOT, you guys are on.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Dr. Pinto. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chris.
Yes.
This is Rich Bertoli from WSP.
Oh, Rich, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I saw Chris Brown's mouth moving there. I thought maybe he was, no, that was a ventriloquist there. Thank you. I'm sorry, Rich.
Thank you for giving the walk team time to update the commission on our permit submittal. Unfortunately, John and the rest of the Condat engineering team had a scheduling conflict for tonight. So Chris and I will do our best to answer any questions, but if there are any that we can't answer or need to discuss with the department, we'll have to take that up with them and get back to you. As far as the discussion on the bulkhead, right now, rights of ways are in negotiations with the property owner. They still own the property, and we can't weigh in on anything other than that they're in negotiations.
Okay. All right.
And with that, I'm going to let Chris present the changes to the permit.
Just one, is it just 68 you're still in negotiation with them on, or are all three of those lots?
No, 68 and 70, I think, is the front lot. The Spinnaker property the state has acquired.
Which is 90?
I believe is 90, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 70 is in the front, but 68 goes, I guess, behind 70. It's all waterfront property.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the status, Chris. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's the question. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Chris.
All right. Very good.
Do you need access to the screen?
What's that?
You need access for screen sharing? We can talk to Michelle.
Oh, yes. I will be wanting to share my screen.
You should be all set. I just changed the settings.
Okay. Before I get started, I thought it would be good to recognize who from the DOT project team is here. We have Kim Lissay, Kevin Cariffa, Andy Davis, and Chris Marjak from Office of Environmental Planning. We have Vlad Kaminsky from District 5 Construction. On the HNTV side, we have myself and Lauren DiGiovanni and Rich Bertoli as part of the program manager. You already heard from him. And Julie Georges, also part of the program management team, is with us tonight. And then from the contractor, we have Andrew Ballas and Jeff Roig. So our agenda tonight is pretty short, unlike some of the other meetings that we've had where we've gone through the replacement of the existing bridge in great detail. What we wanted to do tonight was really give you an update to what we're planning to submit as part of an amended application to DEEP as part of our structures dredge and fill permit application. So your group should have received a notification in early March of a filing of the structures dredge and fill application. The DOT's intent is to submit an amended application that brings some additional clarity and some definition surrounding navigation impacts to one of the construction activities, and that's what we wanted to go through tonight. We wanted to present that adjustment or modification to the application to you before that submittal to DEEP was made. We have had conversations with other groups. Last week, we did meet with the Upstream river user group that we have been routinely meeting with throughout the project development. Divine Brothers, United Marine, rowing groups, King Industries, et cetera, keeping them abreast of the situation as it relates to in-water work as it relates to waterway use, and work being conducted during the construction operation. So all of those communications have been ongoing, and then last week we did give them that update. So on the DEEP application, as you're probably familiar with, it's a series of various documents and attachments, drawings, narrative descriptions, tables summarizing impacts and things of that nature. So what we're talking about with the amended application that we're going to submit, it's really going to be confined to an adjustment to question 2A within the part 3 portion of the application, where we talk about the description of the construction activities. And it's primarily going to be limited to just one of the construction activities. So, going back to some of our earlier conversations that we've had on the project and on the application, the way that we segregated the project in terms of that step-by-step means in which the existing bridge gets replaced with the new bridge, we've broken the project down into 19 different construction activities. Tonight, we're going to focus on construction activity number 13, which is the swing span removal. And that work, in and of itself is really kind of the crescendo of the project, right? There's a lot of activity leading up to it. The swing span gets removed, the south lift span gets installed. It's really kind of one of the highlights of the project itself. So what we want to do is describe some of that additional clarity in the application in terms of navigation impacts related to this particular construction activity. In the application itself, what we wanted to do was provide some refined definitions on what those navigation impacts represent in terms of when the navigation channel is open, when it may be partially restricted, and when it may be fully closed. So in the existing conditions, looking at this schematic view, looking to the north, there's 2 navigation channels that are provided by the swing span. When the span's closed, you have around 16 feet of vertical clearance from mean high water. Vessels can pass through either side of the swing span. When the span is open, same condition holds. Now you obviously have an improvement to your vertical clearances, but you still have those 2 navigation channels. And during construction, one of the things that we've been focused on throughout the project development has been to maintain navigation to the greatest extent possible, and wanting to, at a minimum, work to keep at least one of those navigation channels open throughout construction. So we may be needing to occupy one side of that pivot pier to build the new bridge. Meanwhile, the opposite channel would remain open for use, okay? So in the application, you'll see terminology such as a partial closure of the channel with a height restriction. So what that means is, for example, here, that red box that's placed right in the middle of the east channel would represent a closure of the east channel alone. So maybe there's a construction barge that had to be positioned in that portion of the channel to complete whatever work was going on at that time. Meanwhile, the west side of the channel could remain open. And it's not just confined to the east side being closed. The west side may be closed at times while the east side would be open. So that's what we're calling a partial closure with a height restriction. So in this case, the swing span is closed. When the swing span is open, we still may have those partial closures, right? So now the swing span opens and there's construction equipment in one side of the pivot pier, closing one of the navigation channels, but you have full use of the opposite channel. And, all of that gets described in our marine use plan. That's going to be a living document during construction. It's worked out with all the stakeholders, the harbor master, Coast Guard, Sector Long Island Sound. So everybody's on the same page, having an awareness of any restrictions that might be implemented during the course of construction. The last definition surrounding navigation impacts that you will see in the application is when the channel's fully closed.
Okay.
So there are 2 known instances when the channel gets fully closed. And when the channel gets fully closed, it's primarily to preserve safety of waterway users, safety of the construction team, where there's particular operations where no vessels are going to be permissible to pass. And there may be some construction equipment or temporary structures within the channel that also prohibits movement of any waterway users through the channel. Again, these are going to be identified when they occur well in advance. They'll be communicated thoroughly and planned appropriately so that there will be no surprises when these do occur. They occur when each of the lift spans, so there's 2 lift spans if you remember, when each of those structures gets installed, the channel gets fully closed for a brief period of time. And those are separated by about 12 to 14 months, let's call it, during the course of construction. And the first one wouldn't happen until we're about 4 years into construction. So there's going to be ample opportunities to provide adequate notification for when these full channel closures do occur. But what we wanted to do in the application, again, was to provide that additional clarity in defining what these navigation impacts do represent. Okay, so that's one piece of the update to the construction activity 13, swing span removal. Okay. So the other piece of the swing span removal we'll get to here in a second, but speaking to maintaining navigation traffic, if we use one of the other construction activities just to highlight maintaining navigation traffic in one of the channels, the green arrow represents the channel that is active for use, and these X's here represent the channel that would be closed. So here we're looking to the north, where we'd be working on Piers 2 and Pier 3, and the swing span is open, so vessels can transit this side of the channel or this side of the pivot pier. Meanwhile, this channel is closed. And as I mentioned before, it applies to both sides, right? So in this case, the west channel is open, and then, hey, construction activities change. Now we have to close the west channel, so traffic will get moved to the east channel. So just wanted to highlight that concept again of maintaining at least one of those navigation channels through the bulk of construction. And that's going to be an important point as we talk about the swing span removal itself. And we've talked about this before, and the structure is unique. It carries all 4 tracks, which, again, it was an engineering marvel 130 years ago, but in terms of replacing the bridge, it's challenging. And because of that, the team needed to develop a way that we could safely remove this span from its current location and make room for the new lift spans. Okay, so in the application that you have and that you will see is that the swing span, looking at this schematic, is represented here. Okay, sitting on the big pivot pier, and this would be the position of the south lift span. So we're looking to the east, and there's not any room here to install the lift span. So we got to do something with the existing swing span. And in the deep application, there's descriptions describing 2 schemes to remove that existing swing span in order to install the lift span. In scheme 1 that you see here we're looking to the north, in both of the schemes, the lift span is assembled off-site. Both lift spans get assembled off-site, and then they're ultimately floated into position and then set into place. In scheme 1, what takes place is there's a series of slide rails highlighted in yellow here that are installed in the east channel and the west channel. And the swing span then is closed. So when we're installing the slide rails and we're getting set to move the swing span is closed. The slide rails themselves cause a channel restriction. So as soon as we start doing this work, the channel is fully closed. And that full closure lasts for 90 days. And based on the input that we've received throughout from the waterway users is, generally speaking, there's a period of time over the fall and winter months where this operation could ideally take place. And that's the current plan, is to schedule this work during that time frame. That 90-day period would take place really right in the middle of winter, in the December to January timeframe is the current schedule. So what happens is this swing span itself on these slide rails, here's another view of it, gets pushed to the north along these slide rails, creating that space for the lift span. Okay, and then when the swing span is sitting out on these slide rails north of the bridge, then it gets dismantled into 3 larger sections and then taken off site for further dismantling into more manageable sections. But the 90-day closure is the important thing to remember here. and the slide rails that are supported by piles. The piles are driven into the river, and those also create that channel restriction. So for that 90 days, we have that channel restriction. That's really not anything new in terms of the deep application, but the way that we defined the channel closure and the duration, we wanted to reiterate that as it relates to this particular scheme. And then here again is just another view. So with these piles, these piles don't go straight down. They're angled in. So we're actually underneath the water line here. We're cutting into the horizontal clearance of that channel. And so while all that work's going on, safe passage of any vessel, even if it's really small, would not be permissible. The second scheme introduced into the deep application is one in which we don't move that swing span from its current position to create that space for the new lift span. Alternatively, what we do is we actually leave it where it is, but we remove the south half of the existing span. Let me back up one thing to scheme one. When we do scheme one, we actually close the New Haven line for a period of time. So all 4 tracks are closed for a period of time while the new lift span gets installed. So with scheme 2, what happens is that the 2 northern tracks still remain in operation. So we never take rail service out. So 2 tracks can remain in service. And we create this space for the new lift span here in the space that was previously occupied by the swing span, because we partially removed it. So again, the lift span is assembled off-site. It gets floated up to the bridge location where it will be set down and placed into service. But meanwhile, we remove the southern half of the truss. And what you see here is the southwest quadrant, if you will, removed in this staged approach. So it allows for 2 tracks to remain open on the north. There is no temporary works within the navigation channel, so there are no piles driven in the channel. That reduces resource impacts by eliminating the need for the piling. It has no full channel closure for the swing span removal itself. Now, every alternative will have a channel closure when it comes time to install the lift span, but just for the swing span removal itself, there is no full channel closure. We have partial channel closures that you'll see here in a second. But what it does introduce is that we have a 180-day vertical restriction, because once this operation starts, the span itself can no longer open, okay? So the 180 days is where we are today, and we're continuing to refine that, but we wanted to conservatively place it at 180-day vertical restriction. Same time frame in terms of calendar year placement of this work will occur just as in scheme 1 in those fall to winter months. And based on the stakeholder input we received last week, 180 days, if you do the math, basically is from November 1 through April. There would be that vertical restriction. Okay, so to highlight that a little bit more, and I won't play this whole video, but just kind of focusing on the navigation impacts with this operation, and I'll pause this here. So when we do this partial removal, that notion of keeping one channel open throughout is going to be maintained, versus scheme 1, where the channel is completely blocked. When we're doing this work, we do have the ability to keep one channel open. We do have that vertical height restriction while this work is going on. But as the work progresses, we'll be alternating sides of the channel that we work on. So in this case, the east side of the channel is open. Now we're going to work on, and then we just keep alternating back and forth during the period of time that this swing span removal takes place. So again, in terms of what it would look like on the calendar, as I mentioned, these operations will take place several years into construction. So approximately year 4 and year 5, this operation kind of straddles those calendar years. Starting November 1 and then being completed by the end of April, with the goal of being to bring that back shorter than 180 days. So within the amended DEEP application, the description of construction activity 13 will address the navigation impacts for both of the schemes that are presented, and it will discuss the full closure and the partial closure for both of those schemes. And that represents the update to the DEEP application that we are working to finalize. Like I said, we wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that change, in particular the navigation impacts and the durations that will be included in the application itself before we actually make that submittal.
Chris, John Pinto, when
Yep.
you plan to do, I'm sure that center council, that's all, when that comes out, there's going to be a dredging there. Is that going to be before or after this operation? What?
Right. So the dredging that takes place is that there is some initial dredging that happens around the pivot pier itself, because over time, sediment has built up around that pivot pier, and it really kind of diminishes the ability to get the construction barges into those spaces that we need. So there's an initial dredge that takes place.
Okay, I see.
And then ultimately, when the existing bridge substructure, the 2 rest piers at either end of the swing span and the pivot pier, when those get removed, then the completed channel dredging as depicted in the application gets completed.
I see. Oh.
And all of those activities, the pier removals and the dredging, those are all described in their own discrete construction activities. So that's how we broke up the project, so that we can have standalone construction activities that describe the nature of the work and the associated impacts, as well as mitigation measures for each of those activities.
I have a question. So under this proposal, the old swing span will be demolished basically inside over the river, stick by stick, basically, right? Or the pieces they can drop on a barge. Is that?
Yeah, generally anticipating 3 larger sections. So essentially, when we get to this point,
right,
it would basically be segmented into thirds that then would be taken off-site for that smaller dismantling for disposal.
All right. So the question I'm leading up to is what about lead containment, since it's going to be being done over the river instead of, to some degree over the river, instead of being floated away as a large structure intact?
Right. So we have developed a construction specification that is specific to the removal of the existing steel and the de-leading requirements. And I think that we'd be happy to share that specification with the group if you'd be interested in seeing that.
That'd be interesting.
I can't speak to the actual details contained within that spec right now, but we do have that specification prepared. It's one of those special provisions that were crafted particular to this work.
Is it, do we know if is there full containment required? Is it going to be just, or is it just going to be local containment of wherever the steel is cut?
Yeah, it's going to be, it's highlighted generally by local containment, with the barge itself providing containment and the prevention of material and other particulates from going out beyond the barge itself that's directly below the work being performed.
All right, I don't have anything more on that. I would like to see that spec though.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions about that update that we're planning?
Yes, Chris, Matt Gifford, I had one quick question for you. Great
Hi, Matt.
presentation so far and far more detailed than we've really seen. So I really appreciate that. The question that I had is in terms of the two options that you're talking about.
Yep.
I understand from, again, a great description of what the kind of pros and cons were at a cursory glance here from each one of them. Is there a big difference in timing? Does one create a large number of months and one is created in just days, or are they both basically about the same in terms of time frame?
Right. So in terms of the construction schedule, just because of the sensitivity of preserving waterway use during those critical months, the team is working and towards having that time frame limited to that November 1st through April time frame. So one thing to keep in mind is that when you look at scheme 2, which is that removal of the swing span in pieces in place, that work takes about let's see, would it be 5 weeks, let's say. The rest of that time is occupied by installing the lift span, getting it operational, doing additional track work, and then getting the rest of the swing span away from the river. So all of that work gets captured within that 180 days. On scheme 1, where the channel closure is 90 days, that 90 days would happen within that November 1st to May 1st timeframe. So you'd have a 90-day period within here that would occur, and however that would fall within that period of time is when that work would be performed. So the goal again is to limit these operations to those calendar months of any given year that this work would be completed, so that the primary months, I'll call them that, for waterway use that is more sensitive is not obstructed with these operations.
Okay, and kind of a follow-up to that, you mentioned potentially closing the MTA tracks. Is that something that they've weighed in on? Is that a possibility? I didn't know in all of our discussions so far that was even a possibility. I thought that had to be up and operational at all times.
Yeah, certainly. That is a large detriment to scheme 1. So when that existing span gets pushed to the north, there's no longer any track connectivity across the river. And for the duration that it takes to install the lift span, to get it tested, to get railroad approval, to get it operational, that is a very sensitive topic to Metro North. Most definitely, yes. So the advantage from a rail operation standpoint is such that scheme 2 is more favorable. And if you kind of look at this from the perspective of just the project overall, and even going back all the way to our to our goals for the project was to maintain waterway traffic to the greatest extent possible and maintain rail traffic to the greatest extent possible. Scheme 2 is the preferred scheme to deliver the work. We are showing both alternatives from the standpoint of presenting both from an impact perspective. The slide rails generate that impact to the river bottom with the piles being driven into the river, the removal of those piles, et cetera. And you have the closure of the railroad. Scheme 2, you have no piles. You get to keep the channel open. Yes, you have the vertical restriction that is manageable with the waterway users. You get to keep 2 tracks of the railroad open, which we're already down to 2 tracks at this point of the project anyway, so there's no change there. So weighing all those in conjunction with each other, the scheme 2 would be the preferred methodology.
No, I appreciate that input, and that's kind of when you were going through this, I assumed that was the direction that you were kind of either being pushed in or that the sentiment was kind of heading in, because the pros and cons and the financial impact on that for commerce, travel, commuting, things like that must be just overwhelming.
Definitely has been the topic of many conversations.
Chris, pardon me.
That's the rest of mine. Thank you.
Yep.
Pardon my naivete on this. When you say 90 days or 100 days, that's not consecutive. These aren't consecutive days. These are intermittent days.
No, yeah, Dr. Pino, those are consecutive days.
Okay.
What this graph shows, we broke this down just so everybody kind of had an understanding of what all of the steps are to get the new span operational. So in reality, you're going to start here on November 1, and once that existing northern part of the existing swing span gets removed, that vertical restriction will be in place. The new lift span will be operational,
right?
Because we'll be testing it, and then we'll be commissioning it and turning it over for functionality. But that doesn't do us any good from a navigation standpoint until we can get the north half of the swing span out of there. So that can't happen, though, until all of the track work and all of the railroad signals and testing and all of that work gets completed, because we're relying on those 2 existing northern tracks to maintain the rail service while we're testing and commissioning the new lift span just to the south.
Right.
But as soon as that gets the green light and everything is good to go, that existing portion of the swing span will be removed, and the vertical restriction goes away. That's why the team has spent a lot of time studying and developing the construction schedule, the step by step, down to the single day, down to the half day, down to the hour operations that it takes to make this happen.
Right.
So that we are confident that the 180 days is adequate. And again, as I mentioned, we're continuing to refine that And if we can make an improvement on that, certainly that would be the case. So that permit update that we
John,
wanted
might
to
I
share
ask
tonight
some
was the only
questions?
thing we had on the DOT's agenda for Walk Bridge.
Chris, Jeff, you had questions, Jeff?
Yeah, if you, just for a few moments, unless there are other commissioners that want to ask questions, but the more we hear about this project, the more I think we appreciate the complexity and the level of expertise that's needed to design and build this project. And it's really quite an undertaking. But a couple of questions, Chris, if you don't mind. That's the scheme one. The fact that you continue to present that means that you might have to do that, right? At some point, you may make a decision that scheme one is necessary. And the thought is, my question is, does that require a good bit of contingency planning about how to get people from South Norwalk to East Norwalk and back and forth? It seems that would be a tremendous undertaking to transport people between those two stations. But when would you make a decision about that? Whether to use scheme one or whether not to?
Yeah.
I only bring it up because of the need for advanced planning about who's responsible for that contingency planning.
Right. So any rail outage, any train schedule changes, the team is in constant communication with the planners and decision makers at Metro North, as well as with Amtrak, because they have a vested interest in that rail operation continuity as well. And that communication on any rail outage would be planned out well in advance. So again, these operations are scheduled to take place well within the overall period of construction. And so there's ample time to make those plans, to communicate that to the traveling public, so that, again, no one is faced with a surprise when that happens. So I'd like to reinforce the fact that we're presenting both options in the application. Scheme one from an impact standpoint, you can see it there. We're viewing that as the worst case scenario from an impact standpoint. The preferred scheme and the scheme that the department is leaning towards and the railroads are familiar with would be the implementation of scheme two. But from the application standpoint and that impact calculation perspective, we have included scheme one so that when we're in construction, that we don't have any surprises, right? And we don't have any project delays by requesting a change to our application. This way we have all of the bases covered so that, if we had to come in and we had to drive piles, well, they're already in our application and they've already been approved. We're hoping to actually not do that, but we want to not have that delay because, like you said, if we're 3 months out and there's a change in condition and it's determined that we have to close the railroad down now and we have to drive piles, well, that really doesn't speak well to that advanced planning and notification, right? So we don't want that to happen, but we want it as a means to have it approved if it gets to that point. But the intention is to utilize the preferred scheme.
Can you tell us what the status is of your permit applications to the Corps of Engineers and to the Coast Guard, including the 408 application?
Right. So we have been developing those in general consistency with the deep application, recognizing that our deep application is our priority. Much of the same information that is included in the two Army Corps applications, the 404 and the 408, is generally consistent. We've broken the project down similarly from a construction activity perspective and all of that. So any update that we're going to include in the deep application will then get mirrored in the other two applications. Finally, the Coast Guard application, same position. They've all been essentially developed simultaneously, yet in a sequential order, recognizing that our deep application is our priority to get that finalized. And once that amended application is submitted, the submittal of the Army Corps applications will follow very quickly behind those.
Okay, and then another related question, we talked about this once before. When you submit the deep application, have you decided whether you will request a public hearing on your own at that time, or whether you would see if anybody petitions for a hearing during the public review process?
There's not a request being made for a hearing, no.
Okay. And then I got two other questions. Going back to the bulkhead at 68 Water Street and 90 Water Street, are those plans still in your application? I think one of your project team members told us at one meeting that those were no longer part of the application.
I don't think that would have been an accurate statement.
Okay.
The permit application does still include the bulkhead and the associated impacts related to that construction. The application does still include that.
And then my last question, and I'll be quiet, is a question about what you know about the status of the Eversource application and how the timing of that may affect your construction plans. The timing of the Eversource work.
Right. Yeah, I wish I could answer that, but I don't have information. And Rich, I don't think you have information on that either. Is that accurate?
Is Rich there?
What I will say is that the DOT recognizes the importance of Eversource and their efforts to obtain their permits. Where they are in their process is not anything that I can comment on because I don't know.
Well, Chris, at the very beginning when this project, well, we're talking like 4 or 5 years ago, when we first started talking about this project, it was the Eversource needed to get their lines off the high tension area there before this project could actually get started.
That's still the case.
That is still the case.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's still the case. And so the team has an understanding of the critical path nature of that work as it relates to affecting progression of the walk bridge work. But in terms of where they are in their process is unfortunately something
it seems the longer they delay, this seems to be pushing this project farther and farther out. Does that change your overall timeline for doing things?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
John?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's definitely evaluated and we keep a close eye on it. Both the department and the program side. And we're continuing to work with Eversource on it, like Chris noted, and it is a priority for the program. They are working towards their permits. I believe it was a summer time frame. So I would, hope that you guys would get something, within the next couple of months.
Well, it seemed that it was a top priority several years back that these high tension wires needed to be removed and repositioned prior to you moving forward with the project. And it seems to me that, and I don't understand what the delay on Eversource is in this entire project. I mean, it seems to be the biggest unknown quantity in this whole operation, which seems to be holding up both your progress and certainly our understanding to move forward with this whole project.
Unfortunately, I don't think the department or the program is going to speak for why they've been taking so long.
No, I understand. I know. But all this planning you're doing depends. It seems to be now a moving target because of the delay in Eversource's planning. So I'm not sure. Well, anyway, we wait and see.
I have one additional question. You spoke, well, scheme 2, which seems to be the preferred scheme, has double the impact on upstream users. So can you share what, have mitigation measures been discussed with upstream users? That would, part of what we represent here is their interests. So, we'd like to know that their interests are being taken care of.
Chris, do you want me to cover that, or do you want?
Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
So we've discussed with the rowers the impacts, and they don't have height restriction. We've also discussed with the marinas. They are the bigger concern for the 180 days. So and the November 1st through May 1st time frame was what they actually suggested. So they get the boats upstream before we lock the bridge in place, and then typically they say most people start leaving those marinas around that April timeframe, so they would be held up a couple of weeks, depending on how quick we can if we do bring in that time, that would shorten. So that was their recommendation. And then as far as King Industry, I believe it's King Industries that has the barges.
Divine Brothers.
Sorry, Divine Brothers. Divine Brothers. Our contractor would take a handoff of that barge at the right before the Straffolino and push that barge up underneath with a low headroom tug up to Divine Brothers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and anything else for us tonight?
One quick question about the lots back on Water Street. I was trying to find your revised vessel relocation. Does your vessel relocation plan sit entirely within 90 Water Street, or does that also include some of the lots which are now in question in terms to their use and development?
Yeah, the land side of the vessel relocation is all within 90. The northern piece of the dock, in terms of being in the water, I think spills over a little bit. But the access and all of the landside amenities are all within 90.
Okay.
Okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, that amended application is forthcoming, and you'll receive a notification on when that has been submitted to DEEP. And that's all we had.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
If the vessel relocation program is, as Chris is alluding to, is in 90 South Water Street, and we're looking at 68 and 70, or just 68 for this bulkhead, then is there not a conflict then between those two plots?
I
Hang
think,
on, you referring to me? I'm sorry, is there not a conflict? Well, 90 Water Street property is obviously south of that 68th Street. That certainly puts that at a considerably different location. But I don't know what the proximity is as far as any interference with construction going on there, as well as the placement of those two vessels at that location. I haven't seen any diagram to represent that. We only saw information based on the 68 Water Street location.
we also have the DOTs, which their dock extends into the 68 Water Street frontage.
Right.
I think if you look at the 68 Water Street frontage, their proposal and the DOT's proposal, the docks may actually be in conflict. I'm not 100%, can't say that with certainty, but there's certainly an issue there.
Yeah, we've received that information within the last couple of days and have not had any ability to make any assessment. And as was mentioned earlier, anything related to that is in the hands of DOT negotiations right away, negotiating with the property owner.
Thank you.
I unfortunately don't have anything more to share. So.
You're just about as much in the dark as we are then.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, their walkway goes right down to the property line. So if there's, competing proposals for that area of water, then there's something to be worked out here.
Yes. Well. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for your time tonight.
Chris, thank you very much.
Always nice to be on your agenda. Thanks,
Chris.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Yeah, take care, Chris. Is Mr. Romano around?
I'm here.
All right.
All right, so let us continue with our meeting. Does anybody need a break?
Let's just forge ahead.
All right. Chairman's report, really, there is none other than what is continually going on. And Harbor Master Greg Scully, you want to weigh in on something, Greg? Give us an update on what's
Sure. Really not too much to update, but we might have a couple issues with the normal beginning of the season with a couple rogue sailboats already. So I'm working on those right now. One of them was tied up at vet stock for quite some time, and it seems that the guy's living on the boat. It's unregistered and whatnot, so he's out of Virginia originally. So that I'm working on, and then there's another one that keeps moving around, and last I heard, he's over by Norm Bloom's place, dropped an anchor over there, which I didn't see it today, but I guess he's playing the cat and mouse game. But so typical beginning of the season. Other than that, nothing really new.
What's our how do we remediate these issues?
These guys, unfortunately, it's always the sailboats. They feel that they don't have to pay. They can drop anchor wherever they want. So I can tie him. I can bring him in. The one guy's got a 14-day notice because he dropped anchor. So after 14 days, I'll issue him an order to leave. If he doesn't, then I'll have the Marine unit come in and start doing a warrant for him and stuff like that. But it's unbelievable. It's every single season. This time it's two of them.
How about it, the boat tied up at the city dock?
It's gone now. He moved it.
Okay, but let's say I'm a Long Islander and I come to Norwalk and I say, screw this, I come in late, just park, stay there overnight. I have no obligation to pay a fee?
You do, and that's the thing. So I don't know why he wasn't being charged. You know, I don't have anything to do with the public docks there, but he should have been charged the daily rate by the foot. And I talked to Silva, and Silva said no, there was no charge. He was there for 3 weeks.
Well, is there anyone from actually the what is it? No, I'm sorry, Parks and Rec that keep an eye on that place?
Yeah.
Oh, just wondering.
Yep.
No, the dock
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
open until May 1st or May 15th.
Right.
Right.
docks.
So
Right,
nobody's permanently
but-
down there keeping an eye on the dock.
They're in and out, but the thing is, even though it's not open officially until May, you have to have permission by them to tie the boat up. So Mike Silva has been in contact with them, so I don't know what the deal is with that, but the guy's finally off there. But it started out the same as the other one that just tied it up and said, "Make me move it," you know. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable, but it's gone. It's out here in the channel, and now he keeps bouncing it around here and there. Like I said, I've been told he's been living on it. It's actually a woman that called me about it, and she knows the guy. Somehow she got involved with him and then realized he's kind of a vagrant. And she said he's living on his boat. He's originally from Virginia. He doesn't have a captain's license or boating license or anything. She said he doesn't have the proper anchorage on it and whatnot. But so I guess he knows that I'm looking for him, and he keeps relocating the boat now. So I'll find him. I got those guys.
Have to get our drone after him, Greg.
Yeah, I got Mike and Pete after him. Supposedly Mike spoke to him after I spoke to Mike, and Mike said he's been in touch. He opened up a case on him, so we've got the paperwork going at least. We'll give him. He's got I think 11 or 12 days left. Then I'll issue him the order, and after that, I guess our next deal is that we'll tow it up to the docks, tie it up to the docks, and then he can incur the fees like the last one did, and play it again all over.
Okay, thank you,
And,
Greg. Anything else, Greg?
That's it, though.
How about all the moorings getting put in, as you could see, or?
Yeah, it's weird this year. I think it's all the new people that are moving up this way, but I get a lot of phone calls, and you know, they're thinking of buying a boat. They want to get a mooring. I said, well, you have to have the boat to get the mooring. So I've explained it to them. So they're in the process. Most of them are actually buying the boat, and there was 2 of them that are held up a little bit because of DMV to get the registration, but they're getting there little by little. I guess they thought it was a pretense of you could just get the mooring and let it sit until you get a boat, but not the case.
Your name comes up all the time when I recommend your name for them to talk to you.
Oh, good.
I especially went to Sailboat, and I know they're new customers, and I turn them over to you for location and whatever.
Yep. And then the ones that do have them, I get their information, then I give them Norm Edwards' number, because you know Norm's got to set the mooring, the location, the size of the mooring, and whatnot, and whatever he charges, you know, for the rental or purchase, whatnot. But so far it's been working well. But we'll see what happens. But so far so good, except for these 2 guys, and it hasn't gone awry yet. But they've got another week and a half, and then we'll see.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Jeff, you got anything you want to weigh in on?
No, not now. Thank you.
Pete and Steve, Shellfish?
Sure, really quickly, Mr. Chairman. So the Shellfish Commission reviewed 165 Gregory, 13 River, and 38 Yarmouth after the site inspection that was done by both commissions. And we submitted our consultation form to the commission and the committee, and to the state as well. That's all I have. If you didn't clam today, you missed the lowest tide of 2021.
All right.
Eat Norwalk shellfish. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dennis,
No report, Mr. Chairman.
any, can you give us any update? I mean, does it look like the moorings are coming in fast and furious and getting cured?
A lot of the moorings have already been approved and have come in. We always get the late stragglers after the 30th, April 30th. So it's hard to tell at this point. There's been some activity, but I wouldn't say that it's been normal activity at this point.
And no, you don't see any new activity like Greg was alluding to?
Well, there was a lot of inquiries, and then I give them Greg's number and name, and for the details, especially if they need, if they're a sailboat and they need a specific location. So from that point, once they start the application process, then I will get involved with it.
Okay. All right, and then that's on harbor safety also?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Alan?
Unmute. Yeah, as of the end of March, we have about $2,000 on hand. We started March with a little over $10,000. On the revenue side, we had our first, and Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had our first check from Roy Yacht Club at Hickory Bluff for $2,000 for their summer mooring down payment. On the
Should have had
expense,
all three by now.
what's that?
You should have had all three payments by now.
By the end of March is where we are, or
Yeah.
I am. That's
Okay.
all. That's all the city knows of is one check from Row 8 and Yacht Club at Hickory Bluff. As of the end of March, we're almost the end of April, but I get things the end of the month. So
2 other checks were deposited for Norwalk and Sprite, so I'm not sure what dates you're working with, but they have been deposited.
I'm saying, as of March 31st.
No, I understand that.
April 28th. So I don't know. I don't know what's happened.
I don't either. I mean, as soon as I get them, I deposit them.
Right.
The one for Sprite, I think, Dennis, was like the 3rd week of March or 2nd week of March.
Right. It's yeah.
Yeah, but that's fine. It doesn't, I don't get a report from the city until the 31st of March.
Okay. All right. I
You see what I'm saying? So
the checks are there. You'll get it at some
They probably didn't hit the account. They sat in an office somewhere in an envelope and it just sat there waiting for somebody to do something with it. That's understandable.
And then the expense side, we voted last month to pay Jeff Stedman's consulting fee. We have Greg's stipend, Greg Scully's stipend for the harbor master. And we had our first online mooring charge of $185.11 from the online
Okay.
mooring system.
Well, thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Plans and recommendations. Jeff Mangles, he's not here, but everybody's seen his presentation. Gotten copies of it. We've discussed it, modified it, and I would like to have someone put a motion forward to accept the proposal so we have moved it forward, but to officially move it forward from the Harbor Commission.
John, may I speak?
No, not until the end, Wes, please. Somebody gonna make a motion to move it forward?
Yeah, motion.
Second? Dennis?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on it? I mean, everybody's had a chance to weigh in.
John, I wish that Jeff was here because he's been a great advocate running this from the very beginning, and dealing with the pros and the cons and everything in between. Has there been any discussion on the commercial side with what the plan to move forward is, and have they had any response?
Well, right now, we're moving forward just with the proposal that you guys wound up finalizing and we put forward. With a lot of massaging, a lot of looking at it, a lot of soul searching. We're putting it forward. Does that mean that that's the absolute product? The only reason I'm asking to officialize it is because it has to go into the hands of the city for them to vet it, and it's going to get massaged even more. So, but from our perspective, the work product that was done by you and Jeff and Alan and others in that committee, that's what I'm asking for the blessing. So it's been motioned, seconded, all in favor? Opposed? None? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain just for the moment, John.
All right, 2 abstentions, so the motion passed. All right, moving right along. Newsletter, Alan.
No report.
Okay, water quality, John and Joe?
Mr. Chairman, we had a pretty good meeting on April 1st, and it wasn't an April Fool's joke, unfortunately. We had an extensive conversation in regards to Miss Jones's letter to us, Linnell Jones's letter to us. And we're in the process of doing a little bit of background research. I've talked to the head of the association, and I'm waiting to get in touch with the head of the Norwalk Yacht Club. I've left messages there, but no one has gotten back to me. I've also have letters out to Deep, and they got a preliminary response, but nothing definite at this point. Under new business, we had Dick Harris give a presentation on the data that he's been collecting from doing sampling north of the bridge work and south of the bridge work. And he's very happy with what he's been seeing. He's also submitted a count of.
Sorry, Joe, what is he analyzed for, Joe? Are you looking for?
I got it right here. Hang on.
Bacteria count? He's looking at
No.
chemicals or high metals? What is he?
No, he did aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, nickel, and zinc.
Who does his atomic absorption work? Does he send that out?
He sends it out. All he does is collect a sample.
Okay.
Yeah, he's obviously doing it to protect the shellfish industry.
Right.
You know,
So he's looking at the water column.
he's actually doing core samples on the bottom.
Oh.
You know, waiting to see what has, if anything, has have the silt screens worked or have they not? You know, is this stuff drifting upstream or downstream? And I can send you a copy of the report if you'd like that, John.
Huh. I'd be interested in seeing that. You know, as far as the metal analysis. So he's just looking at metals, heavy, light metals, and he's not looking at any aromatic hydrocarbons, et cetera, heterocyclic amines. That's quite an extensive load to analyze for, but nonetheless,
it gets expensive.
Yeah, it does. It does.
You know, and I think that's part of the limiting factor. You know, I believe he could do more, but he feels he's got a good enough handle to realize that some of the work that's been done so far has not been significant enough, caused significant enough of a problem. He's happy with it. Okay, the other thing he submitted is cause for alarm, and that is a report on mitten crabs that they've been getting up on the Housatonic River. And this is a crab that, as it moves through Long Island Sound, could create problems for a lot of shellfish as well as other crab species. So it's the type of thing that we want to keep our eyes and ears open to. And any fishermen, you know, if they can keep their eyes open to see if they're getting any when they're going out, especially if they're blackfish fishermen, They're usually using crabs and they may go out and collect them on their own. But if they find that the mitten crabs are in the area, they want to let Deep know immediately that they've moved into our area.
What's the origin of these species, Joe?
They're Chinese.
Oh, figures.
Yeah, the coronavirus was kind of a prelude, and now they're hitting us up with the mitten crabs. And I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
So did we establish a couple of months ago when we were talking about this that a lot of the borders and banks were a big problem?
Actually, they were a couple of years ago. Is when they first started moving into the East Coast, and they're hitting in different pockets right now. They're getting Dick is getting them on the oyster boats when they pull up the dredges. They go down and take a look and see what's in the dredge, and this is when they're finding them. And this is a crab that, ironically enough, thrives in fresh water. So they're finding it in bays and harbors where you have rivers flowing into a bay, and they can handle salt water. So it's a tough little bugger. And the good news is when we had the Asian short crab invasion, all of us thought that was going to really set everything back. But luckily, the fish learned to eat them, and they're now considered a delicacy for a lot of the fish. And actually, there are Asian restaurants that make poppers out of Asian short crabs. So they're going out collecting them. Maybe they'll do the same thing with Chinese mitten crabs. We'll see.
Is that it, Joe?
That's it, John.
Thank you very much. John Crespo, anything that you want to bring back to the table from the meetings you've attended?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. There's nothing under bridges right now other than what we've already went through. We're going to go to public comment, but I want to give Wes the courtesy to chime in because he wanted to speak on a subject that we slightly touched on today and have been discussing for months. Wes, you want to go ahead? Is he dropped off?
I think he's dropped off, John.
That's too bad. I didn't mean to cut him down, but it wasn't
Yes.
time for public to speak.
I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure. I hope he appreciated that, but I guess not.
Okay. Then there may be others, but first up, it's because she's asked to be put on the agenda to speak tonight, is Linnell Jones. Linnell, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I don't know if you can see me. I want to thank all of you because I really do learn a tremendous amount listening to these meetings. And as some of you know,
You've been muted. Linnell, somehow you're muted again.
Unmute.
Okay, there you go.
Am I there?
You're there now. Yep.
There I am. Thank you. Thank you. I've learned a lot. Before I went to your meetings, I didn't know that boats couldn't dump any sewage in the water and that it was dangerous to just direct your runoff stormwater from lawns into the ground. I asked to be put on the agenda. You all know I've sent you a few emails after April 1st, but on April 1st, I had 2 items for the agenda. One was the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan supports and encourages a pump out station in Wilson Cove. So when I went and pulled the permit I had from DEEP last summer, I filed a complaint because I didn't think the pump out station was in use. We all know how that rolled down. I hope everyone read the report that I sent, which included the story of a holding tank and a septic truck, but I don't think there's ever been one. Maybe Lori, who's been on the board, a member and is next door to the yacht club, can tell me, has there ever been a holding tank that's filled or a septic truck?
I don't know the answer to that. So
And I don't know if
abstain
we
from that.
expect to see one this year. I can tell you, Kate Brown called me and said that next year she would work harder at writing the terms and the conditions of the permit. I felt the permit was clearly written, and I felt that the general manager was just slightly disingenuous. I just want to point out to this commission today what I put in my email today, which was to please look at Google Earth and look at this particular site, which is on septic. And it's on septic because private roads and there is no green space. So I'm not sure how this septic works. I think maybe there needs to be some form of testing. I don't know. I was surprised, and I think it should come to everyone's attention when we saw DEEP did find violations. They didn't agree with my complaints on my violations of their terms and conditions, but they found an environmental violation, which again, either shows they don't know the rules or they're just not following them. Maybe we all just need some education, but I think that's important. And the fact that DEEP did change a special condition, I think is a reason for me to request this municipal site plan review. So you can read that. My second agenda, and again, I'm here to listen, okay, is I do believe, and Lori, you moved to Wilson Point in 2011. By 2013, you were vice president of the board of Wilson Point. So you were on the board that decided to allow Jeff Erdman to redesign the common space between 2 and 2.5 Nathan Hale Road. And before those pipes, which I believe are point source pollution, before those pipes were put in, this was the only area where a resident like myself, who's not a member of either of the clubs with private beaches on Wilson Point, this is the only area where someone could back up and the public could access the water with a boat. At the time, believing Wilson Point that they had the authority to do this, I wrote, I don't know if you remember my email, I'll share it with you again, and I'll share the pictures. But I think that now that I've read the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan 5 times, I believe that the Norwalk Harbor Management Plan encourages public access, and that this is problematic for a few reasons. Again, why I've asked for this to be reviewed. And Lori, if you disagree with anything else I've represented about the work done by the Wilson Point Board at 6 Nathan Hale, please let me know. The value of coming together and communicating is that many different points of view can be shared, because I believe we all want the same thing, and that's good water quality. And testing has incredibly improved. Long Island is all about the nitrogen, and just knowing what you did. Why is it so secret to know? I'm a member of Wilson Point. I paid for the work that you did. Why not share the plans? And as you know, and I know, we're in litigation about that, but I feel that just directing drainage from homes that have drainage problems into the sound without any filters or best practices or review or permit is against the Connecticut Coastal Permit Program. And I just think it should be reviewed. So if you disagree with anything I say, please share it with me and the rest of the commission.
I just want to correct you on one thing.
Sure.
And Jeff may want to weigh in, is that yes, the harbor plan does reinforce and call for public access, but you're in a private association and you guys control the properties there. And there's nothing that the city can weigh in on other than stand by the statement, we encourage it, but there's no, we can allow public access on street ends that the city owns, that's been deeded to the
Fair enough, John. I get it, but it's like, kind of the spirit of it. Again, I owned 8 Point Road for a decade, and I was told by, again, the board of Wilson Point can say one thing to one person, another thing to another person. Lori knows, living at 4 Nathan Hale, there's another drain between 4 Nathan Hale and 2.5 Nathan Hale that takes a tremendous amount of drainage. We have a lot of undocumented drains, and the idea that someone can just direct runoff from, Point Road, the hill up at Point Road, because we had a drainage issue, into the Sound without a permit made no sense to me. And the excuse that Tom Closter gave permission is just disingenuous. And, people fib. Lying's at the heart of the human species. And intelligence is figuring out when you're being lied to. And that's why I ask questions, because I think what we're doing, if there's something to hide, just show the plans. And we should have best practices. Nathan Hale floods up all the time. I'll provide pictures. I'll shut up, but I think we should have some more testing, something. And it's fascinating to me to see Lori on this committee. But I do think that these rules apply to Wilson Point. They just can't do this, and look at the wetlands next to Wilson Point.
All right, well, thank you for your input. Your follow-up should be with Deep. Big.
And my follow-up's going to be with everybody, John.
Okay, so.
Because I learn, and I think people need to learn, not turn their back, call me a harasser, and not share the information. Okay.
No point well taken, and thank you. I want to move. I was going to put Wes. I was putting you in before Linnell before, and then we couldn't find you. So
John, can I just say one thing? I just want to thank Joe for following up on Linnell's concerns. I think that's really appropriate, and you'll discover that there is full transparency, which actually Linnell has had the information a couple of times sent to her. So anyway, thank you, Joe, for following up.
We're trying.
Okay, Wes, you wanted to comment, and I know it's about the mooring plan and some of your thoughts about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My only comment is that the plan is going forward. I haven't seen the latest revisions. I don't know what massaging has been done to it, but my comment is going into the discussion of that plan. One of our basic assumptions was that we would treat all pleasure boats equally in terms of the way they were being asked to pay a fee. And the way it has turned out is the 400 or so boats that are on moorings are being asked to pay a fee that's 2.5 to 3 times more than the 1,200 boats that are in slips. And I don't think that's right. That's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do. The fee for boats and slips is $35. The fee for a boat on a mooring is $100. And that just doesn't equate. The managed fields, you've suggested a discount for the managed fields, but the discount doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it doesn't reflect the work that the managed fields do to ease the burden on the city in terms of collecting the revenue. So I urge you all to think again about treating all the vessels equally in terms of the rate structure that is proposed.
I'm not going to defend the plan because Jeff was the one that was really very instrumental in it, and he's not here tonight. So we can continue this conversation next month with him present.
That's fine, John. I've talked to Jeff a lot. As you know, I participated in all the committee meetings to get to that. But that one thing has been, whenever I bring that up, the difference between the amount being charged to mooring holders versus the amount being charged to slip holders, everybody goes silent.
We couldn't drag our feet on this any longer. because it has to go through legal, it's got to go through ordinance committee and maybe park and rec committee. So, and then there'll be a public hearing. So this isn't over if you want your input.
No, I understand that, and believe me, I'm going to go the other route as well. I just think that from a fairness standpoint, everybody ought to be treated equally, and that's not the case at this point.
Okay.
And John, just so you know, that was the reason for my abstention on the vote. Is I've asked Jeff, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet, but I asked him that question. It feels like a missed revenue opportunity for the Harbor Commission.
Okay, well, again, it would be nice in the future if you share some of those thoughts and ideas to be at least thought about before the plan was finalized. But like I said, it doesn't matter at this point. It's not finalized. It's just finally been pushed forward out of committee to the commission, to the city.
John, I'm sorry, but that's not a reasonable statement, because I've been in communication with Jeff, with you, with everybody about the fairness issue, and it just seems to fall on deaf ears.
Not really. He went through a lot of time and effort to put charts together to show that there really isn't that much of a disparity.
I disagree.
Well, see, maybe where the disagreement comes in, it comes in more from the fact that the moorings in big picture have been so reasonable for so long that you're feeling that the price today, which it should have been many years ago, is too much of a jump. But that's part of it. We're the cheapest and cheapest game in town at this point.
John, the people on moorings have supported the Harbor Commission for a long time. The people in slips have paid nothing.
No question about that. And you personally are very responsible for helping us get to this committee going and looking at the different needs that we have to address them. And
so let's take the final step and make it all equal with what is sent to the city.
Well, again,
I think it's a little disingenuous to say the whole point of this was to make everybody pay the same thing, because that had really nothing to do with the committee I started on. And maybe you have a different idea of what it was all about, but it was to raise revenue for the Harbor Commission. And we already have revenue from the mooring permit every year, but we don't have anything from the other boaters, both commercial and recreational in the harbor. So that's really what our project was about. I know you think it should be fair for absolutely the same for everyone, but that was not an objective of our committee to make everybody pay the same. There's a
Alan,
whole lot of
may
I finish, please?
Yes, sir.
I think there's a whole lot of difference between a boat and a slip and a boat and a mooring in terms of the city's involvement and what you get for the mooring. And I don't want to discuss that here, but what's disingenuous is it wasn't about fair for everybody. The discussion was about revenue from other boats in the harbor who give us nothing, and also for the notion of accruing some funds for dredging, which affects all of us. So that's where my head has been for the last year plus on this.
Well, again, Alan, with all due respect, you weren't in on the beginning of it, and part of the assumptions going in was that we would, where the burden had been borne by the mooring holders 100% in the past, we were now introducing, in an effort to raise revenue, which was desperately needed by the commission. The concept was to get revenue from all of the boaters, not just the mooring holders, and in the course of doing that was to treat everybody the same.
That must go back before Jeff and I got involved with this, because
it did.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything before that. I came in about the time you and Jim got involved.
You wanted to put forward, Wes, but